As people trickle in, I see there are more people in the chat. Feel free to let us know, where you're tuning in from. We will get started now. So I'll go ahead and introduce myself and also introduce Jess. So you've already probably seen me around a little bit, running around all over the conference, moderating, introducing. Oh, okay, cool. Hello, Frankie. I'm the Partnerships Engagement Specialist for Tequeria. I've been a part of Tequeria now for a few years, and it's always good vibes. I'm tuning in from the Bay Area, so I hope to see some of y'all next Tuesday. And I'll introduce Jess. So Jessica, here with us, leads TaskRabbit's people function and is responsible for cultivating a strong culture of connection, caring, growth, and impact. Her passion lies with ensuring all employees feel a sense of purpose that results in a lasting commitment to TaskRabbit's mission and vision. She is a proud senior leadership executive representative of TaskRabbit's Latinx Cultural Affinity Group, which aims to celebrate the diversity and intersectionality of Latinidad by creating a safe space for discussions, storytelling, and curiosity. Jessica studied psychology and HR management at Baruch Zicklin, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, School of Business, and holds a senior professional in human resources certification from HRCI. When she's not in the boardroom advocating for people-first strategies, Jessica is home in New York, where her 9 and 5-year-old girls own the boss's seats. Along with her partner and their English bulldog, they enjoy skiing, boating, baking, playing board games, and having dance parties. Welcome, Jessica. Thank you so much. I love that. What are you guys currently dancing to?
Oh, well, unfortunately, though I'm sure there are a lot of fans here, my 9-year-old has made it into the Taylor Swift phase. So she's
okay, a Swiftie.
So I have no choice but to be a fan. But my kids also like the classics like Michael Jackson and things like that. So we have a variety. We have a nice mix.
So I see maybe a little bit of moonwalking.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And my 9-year-old is always asking me to teach her salsa dancing. And her dad tells her that's not my realm of expertise. You have to go to your mom. So
that's so cute. I love to hear that. A little bit of a salsa, and then you bust in some moonwalking in the same.
Exactly.
I love the diversity there.
Yeah, that's right.
And I also love all the pictures you have in your background. It just looks so colorful, and that's awesome. Okay, awesome. I'd love to see that there's more people hopping in. Welcome, welcome. So we'll get started with the conversation. So let's get started with Jessica. How long have you been in tech?
So I have been in tech most of my career, so about 15 years of my total career journey. I won't go into that total number. Before tech, I started my career more traditional environments, learning the basics of employment law and HR processes and some of the boring stuff. But there was always more I really wanted to do, and it just seemed like there was such a more modern way of dealing with people. So I worked to be really great at the core basics, and then sort of individually grew my skills separately in business acumen, getting to know the tech industry, some emerging trends, because these are all really foundational skills for the tech industry. And then luckily I was able to sort of make my way in.
That's amazing. I love to hear that. And I would never believe that you have been around for 15 years. We need you to drop the skin routine pretty soon.
Fine. A couple of pluses after that, but it's okay.
I don't believe that. That's incredible. One of the things I was interested in, as you mentioned a little bit earlier, but what got you interested in joining, the tech industry?
It's the pace, really. I have a tendency to want to move really quickly, and I want to be learning always and being challenged. And it's also much more exciting for me to know that I can potentially do more than what my role requires. I find that traditional industries, your job is your job. But in tech, you have to always do just more than that. And when I think of others getting into the tech space, the best way to do that is really to express your passion for going outside of your job description. So in other words, being open to innovation, creativity, showing an interest in the business, these are all things that were really exciting to me and the tech industry offers.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely hear that. I feel like in my last role, which was also within the people side, I was people experienced, but then I also opened an office because I was doing office management. So I'm like, wow, who would have known? I don't know. But all of a sudden you're there and opening offices in multiple places.
Exactly right. Some may say that the burnout rate in tech is a little bit higher, and that's because there is this expectation to maybe do a little bit of everything. And so I think it's really for people who are interested in not the monotony of sort of the same thing every day, but trying something new and different. And that's very much me.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you've talked about your career journey a little bit, what was something that inspired you to become a vice president of people?
I'll start from the very beginning. I think inspiration came over time. And it was quite a journey. I didn't grow up in a very traditional family dynamic. And one way that impacted me was that I needed to independently put myself through school while also working full-time at a really early age. And so this meant I explored what interested me while in the workforce and while taking courses. I veered and I tried different things, and I likely spent way more time in school than one would like, shifting majors and just sort of finding my way. And on one hand, it meant I was in school for a really long time and just like this confused kid trying to figure things out. In another way, it meant that I actually found my passion and was able to do what I'm good at because I tested and I tried. And from a pure work perspective, many people saw me being successful in the people function, or what they called HR at the time. I didn't even know what human resources was, never mind people operations. And they would tell me, oh, you'd be great in HR. And so I stayed really open always to what other people saw my strengths as well as what I saw my strengths as, and then sort of finding that common ground. And after trying different career routes, I decided to take a step back. I was in sales, making commission and sort of traveling. And then I said, I really want to do HR. And I took an HR admin job, so a few steps back, because I just knew if you do something you're really passionate and good at, that sort of, inspiration comes. It just comes in how interested you are in doing what you do every day. And so I don't know that I knew exactly what I wanted to do. But I certainly knew just what today interested me, and then I was able to sort of build my career from there.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that you actually used to be a part of a sales org, because I feel like, when you're learning how to manage teams or like culture specifically, being in a sales team usually tends to be like, high stress, competitive, really high burnout and turnaround rates, right? Yeah. So I feel like that might have been maybe like firsthand experience into how you want to build a people culture team. Do you resonate with that? Did it help you?
It also taught me a little bit about what I didn't love about, how companies were handling culture. And I also learned about myself being in sales. You're working with people, right? The way that you are in a people function, but you are manipulating is probably a really tough word to use, but you're trying to get them to do a thing for you.
Right.
And that wasn't really resonating with me. I wanted to do for them. And so, yeah, it kind of just teaches you how important it is to be connected to the company and have a strong culture, but also sort of teaches you what you love about working with people and what you might not love about working with people.
Yeah, absolutely. I see some people in the chat. John mentioned, so many of us relate that to being like first gen or immigrants. Totally hear that. Yes. So, given that, you were in a sales organization and now you're, leading culture and teams, why do you think that tech companies or organizations sometimes have trouble creating that safer or inclusive environment, specifically for the Latina community?
I think it really comes down to, it just needs to be genuine. This is really the best and only way to succeed in creating an inclusive environment. And it's not to say many companies are not working hard, but having a really true understanding of what it even means to be of a different background and experience can help create more organic connections and inclusion. And we need companies and organizations to sort of bake that into their own business, their mission, and implement programs and resources that really increase and retain diverse talent. So for example, I can share at TaskRabbit, we send out a company-wide belonging survey to our employees. I started this about 2 years ago to better understand where we stand as a company. Are we even creating a safe and inclusive environment? We might think, oh man, look at all these incredible programs we're doing. Look at us. But we have to hear from the community that it's really hitting the mark. And this year we learned that 86% of our Latinx employees feel a great sense of belonging at TaskRabbit, which is fantastic, and actually slightly higher compared to the company overall. So it's really nice to see. But obviously there's that 12% that's a little unsure. And so immediately we recognized that one of the reasons was that even though our diversity numbers are really great, it's much higher than the tech industry average. As you move up in management, that diversity decreases. And so from that survey, we immediately put a mentorship program together in partnership with our affinity groups, so that at the end of the day, commitment really needs to come from the core of what you're doing. You can't just check these boxes. You have to really want to create this environment for your people and action on it and take action. I think of myself, I'm Puerto Rican. I was born and raised in the Bronx, which has a very beautiful, robust Latinx community and Hispanic community.
Yeah.
And I had a very heavy Bronx Puerto Rican accent when I entered the corporate world, and I immediately forced myself to code switch a bit, right? Because people would hear it and they'd say, "Where are you from?" And like, "Oh, listen to that accent." And so I felt like I had to code switch. And I noticed too, even with code switching, that I have a privilege and that I'm very white passing. And so once that happened, I likely had opportunities that other people wouldn't have had. And so I think about growing up, and I think about myself, and I think about how growing up in the Bronx, and I had great friends and family, all Hispanic, Latinx. I was always the white girl, the gringa, right? And so, and in Puerto Rico, blonde hair, blue eyes, very common, but in the Bronx, maybe not as much. And so I was always sort of the odd person out. And then in the corporate world, I didn't really resonate with that group either, because I had a different, spicier upbringing, and it wasn't the same taste in music and things. So like never really fully feeling like I belonged in either, or maybe I belonged in both. And so anyway, it's so nuanced and complex, different backgrounds and identities, and organizations have to really actually just want to listen and understand and know that in order to create the environments that are healthy for us.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned earlier how starting to create a culture of belonging really starts by being genuine, right? And given that, you initially had to code switch when you first started in the corporate space, how do you create that space for, the people that you lead to not have to code switch?
I think it is being open to all voices and being really intentional, not just to say, hey, make sure you raise your hand, but to call on people to make sure that community is being heard. So we have, I think, a little bit more than a dozen affinity groups. We have a wide array of employee resource groups. And yes, they exist to sort of have a sense of belonging amongst themselves, but we also leverage them to make decisions about our platform. We tap in and say, like, your voice is super important. We want to hear about what you think about our recruitment practices. We want to, when we put this mentorship program together, we immediately went to our Black and Hispanic affinity groups and says, are we hitting the mark here? Like, what do you think? And so I think really intentionally opening up that space to hear voices then you start learning from others and you realize how incredible diversity really is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, even when we think about like the natural world, like diversity, biodiversity is what makes the most resilient ecosystems, right? So we
Yeah.
have to like bring that sort of thinking back into like any sort of ecosystem. And diversity really is our strength. Specifically, when we think about the Latina community, we are so diverse, you know, literally every shade. Whenever I think about what a Latino person looks like I don't, because I will always be surprised.
Yeah. That's absolutely right. Yeah.
Okay, so another question. How do you think we can like politely communicate, but yet sternly enforce the needs of our community to thrive and grow into, you know, our current and future tech organizations? I guess kind of like, how do we make our voice stand out? You know, how do we like level up into that leadership? You know, we're ready, we got the resources, we got mentorship, but then how do we give ourselves that like permission to be like, now I'm going to speak myself into existence here?
Well, I love that you even just said that word permission, because I think that's where it starts. And first I love this question, because I think for white communities, they don't necessarily focus on being sure they're polite or using these very sensitive adjectives, right? Of course, we should all be respectful, but my guess is that especially white cis male colleagues are not really pushing adjectives ahead of their intentions. They're just showing up with their thoughts, prompted or otherwise. I've seen both. And I will say, ironically, you know, back to the, giving yourself permission, I do think that that extra intention of trying not to rock the boat, or, you know, we're trying to be polite, can actually show up as maybe potentially insecure or less confident. And I personally suffered from imposter syndrome. And when I say have, I mean I do, like right second right now. I like to think it's a sign of humility, but nonetheless, or not, it wasn't until I began not to hold back that my career really ended up taking off. You know, I think about a company that I was at, and I got a new boss, a new managing director came in, and I had just come back from maternity leave. So like my hormones are like all over the place, and it just was an interesting environment. And they weren't the nicest, right? And I kind of told myself, you know what, I think I'm going to leave. This is not really the right place for me. I started looking. I had a couple of offers on the table. And it was in that moment where I'm like, you know what, now I have nothing to lose. I know I don't really want to be here anymore, but I still felt really passionate about my job. But then I all of a sudden started to attend meetings and just like saying things, right? Going like, oh, I disagree with that. We should actually do this. And again, purely respectfully, professionally, I didn't want to burn bridges. But right. This confidence came because I'm like, what do I have to lose? I'm about to give my notice, right? And what's funny is when I finally gave my notice, that same person, that managing director, was like, oh my God, in the last couple of weeks, no, you can't go. Like, you're amazing. I need to hear from you more. And I still left at the end of the story because they didn't value me when I wanted them to value me. But I took that with me to the next job. On day one, I said, like, what if I just showed up with all the confidence and not held back and was just myself? You know, what would that look like? And yeah, my career really took off. And the Latinx community, as you say, it's so special because although we're one community, there's so much diversity amongst even ourselves. So it's so important that we vocalize our needs to our company, to our peers, and just share with them our amazing culture and our thoughts and our ideas. And get involved in culture, by the way. I am the people person saying that. I encourage Latinx folks to get involved in the company culture. It's just one more way to be really visible, to get your career going where you want it to.
I love that you mentioned that once, you know, you just started saying, I'm just going to use my voice, doesn't matter because I'm already like 1 foot out. I love that that was like a turning point for you because, you know, sometimes we sort of tend to think of these companies as like, we're not like, they have more of a power dynamic, right? Yes. We're not in like the driver's seat, but then we also have to think about how these companies resonate with us. Mm-hmm. And if we use our voice then, and it's valued, then we're in the right space. If it's not valued, there will be another space, right? And just kind of like keeping and finding that, which you were able to find. So.
Yeah. And so highly recommend not to wait until one foot is out the door. But the point being, that's sort of when I got my confidence and be and own who you are. You have so much to offer. We all do. And I think it's just about not being afraid of that.
Yes, absolutely. I love that. So we are coming up with like just 8 more minutes. So I did want to get to some of the questions that people had. I see here from Joelle, who is also a Boricua. Okay, love to see the Boricua love in the chat. In your role as vice president of people operations, how do you encourage your colleagues, your teams, or your company culture to feel like they can become thought leaders, bring their ideas to the table without the feeling of like, oh, I can't. So I feel like we've kind of touched on this a little bit, just like kind of. But do you have like any additional thoughts or any additional experience?
A little bit, yeah. I think particularly as a leader, so that's sort of independently, bring that confidence to yourself. As a leader, one way I hope and like to do that is to show vulnerability for myself. So I think, the more senior you are in your career, it's super important that you show that even your ideas can be wrong, can be right, and then being really vulnerable, because that vulnerability then creates sort of that psychological safety where people are like, oh, I can say anything, even if it ends up not being the right thing. Because Jessica's like, oh, crap, that wasn't right. Sorry. So I think that vulnerability is so important in leadership. And that's how you sort of open the door to voices.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I think, just seeing someone else kind of stumble and make mistakes and then own it always gives me more confidence to be like, oh yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, I just stuttered, or like maybe this idea didn't pan out the way that I thought it was going to pan out, but we always learn something from it, right? The next way to approach a situation. So I love that piece of advice, and I'm definitely going to take that with me. Whenever I think about my own leadership skills. Okay, this is another good question, given, like the current state of tech that we've seen. When layoffs do occur, why do you believe that diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, or people departments are some of the first ones to get hit? And what are some of the ways we can make that not be the case?
Yeah, and I've definitely been part of those decisions, and they always hurt a little bit because we know we're important. So one, I think it goes back to what you're saying. It has to be the right company to make those right decisions. But even outside of that, I've learned we have to embed DEIB and the people function into the business from the very beginning, hands down. I've learned that what sometimes ends up happening is when they get to that point, that's when we're like, no, you need us and don't cut that. But like if it's often and from the beginning, just embedded in the business process. We know how essential we are. We know that to make a huge difference to our culture and our business results, you need a great people function. You need diversity. You need inclusion. But we've got to be tying that to customers, and we've got to be tying that to data, and we have to tie that to our platform. Our platform, TaskRabbit, has incredible diversity. So why wouldn't we focus on that, right? Why would we cut there? Because then we're disconnected from our own communities. And so I think really just making sure that it's part of the fabric of the company. When I joined TaskRabbit 3 years ago, one of the first things I did was create a DIB long-term strategy. So rather than just sort of doing things, which we were, and we were doing an incredible job, creating a strategy over time and then tying that to our platform and communities, better enabled the business to just think about DEIB immediately rather than me having to sort of push it. Topics like pay equity, internal fair pay, embedded in our principles of our annual comp review, not just like a thing we do sometimes. So really super important that it's there in the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you mentioned that. And I'd love to, maybe just follow up quickly with which have been some of your favorite DEIB projects that you've gotten to work with. And then we'll follow up with like a fun fact question.
Oh, goodness. Wow, we've done so much. And I think I have one team member here, maybe more, who would probably laugh at this because I keep them really busy. But we've done a lot. I think developing that strategy was really, really fun for me because we took a phased approach where we said, where do we want to be a year from now, and then 2 years, and then 3 years, and how would we define that, and what would that look like, and just really thinking much longer term. And then also for me, I think some companies make the mistake of focusing on diversity first, but you really have to focus on inclusion and belonging first, because then you can bring as much diverse communities in, but they're not going to stay. They're also not going to grow. So probably some of my favorite programs were some of the inclusion programs, developing our affinity groups. We have a task force. We created a new award for DEIB champions. Allyship. We do monthly huddles, allyship huddles, and it's like a different topic always to sort of educate others, and also a time to come together. And we do annual town halls on how to be anti-racist. And so just like embedding all of these programs so it's top of mind for everyone, and then focusing on diversity, that's I think been the most fun for me.
That's incredible. I love to hear that. And I'm like writing down ideas mentally in my head, allyship huddles, like all of these things.
Happy to share.
Yes. And I love to see that we have so much engagement in the chat too. Everyone is just loving the session, loving all of your wisdom you're sharing with us, Jess. Thank you so much. Maybe we have like time for like one more question. So I see, John asked, how have you handled the recent attack on DEI with, how have you handled the attack on DEI with the recent attacks from Supreme Court and certain politicians?
So 2 things. One, acknowledging it, always super important. There have been days, when they overturned Roe versus Wade, like I needed a moment, but I knew immediately we needed to say something to our employees. And so just acknowledging it as soon as possible, even if that notice, we heard that this just happened today. You all probably need space. Some of you might be having a really hard time. Take the day off. So I think just that moment of, we know this is happening. It sucks. We're here for you. But then there's the action. So if I stayed with that example at Roe versus Wade, we immediately created a reproductive stipend, and we immediately created programs to support folks who would no longer have access to abortion or reproductive health care. And so I think balancing those 2 things of let's acknowledge that some of you are not good today, right? And we do bring ourselves to work. You can't split it out. I can be someone else at work. And so giving people space, but then also doing as much as you can to sort of right size it as a company, whatever's in your power.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for being so vulnerable in this space with us, Jessica. I think someone mentioned, how can I drop the fire emoji on this much needed conversation? So the wisdom, the vulnerability, the showing up in this space has been wonderful. Again, highly appreciate both you and this community. Thank you for being a part of it. If we want to just end on like what's bringing you joy, I think we started with that beginning, but now we actually have the space. Or maybe something that's going to bring you joy this weekend.
What's bringing me joy is I've been traveling for work the last 3 weeks, and so doing absolutely nothing this weekend with my 9 and 5-year-old girls.
That sounds amazing.
Really looking forward to that. So what brings me joy is hanging out with my friends, being with my family. I'm a very boring person, but thank you so much for having me, Val. You could have had so many people in this seat, and I am privileged and thankful you chose me.
Likewise, thank you so much. And everyone, let's head over to the stage. See you there. Thank you again. Gracias.